All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes, but as you see, we have open seating for tonight. So with that, we have some fresh faces around us at our tables. So we're going to do a quick, I'm going to put up on the slide here, just a quick name introduction. And given that the weather is finally feeling like fall to catch up, just something you're looking forward to with fall finally arriving as well. So we'll get kicked off in just a couple minutes here, but wanted to get you all going, if you haven't already, with some introductions at the table, and then we'll get going with tonight's content. Yeah.
Went down the rabbit hole. Yes.
Oh my God.
No.
All right. Thank you all for jumping in with those, and encourage you to continue chatting if you get a chance throughout tonight's session. But thank you all for coming back and joining the second On Development Committee meeting. For those of you I didn't get to meet in person last time, my name is Evan. I'm with a group called Peter Crocker, working in partnership with Peter and Townsend Geary to help lead this process alongside the Hillsboro School District and the Steering Committee to help prepare for potential bond in 2026. And so really excited to just do a brief recap of what we covered in the first meeting, and then queue up some opportunities for you to hear from some district personnel to really dive into some specific content this evening before going into some group discussions too. So as promised from the last meeting was the most you will hear me speak. Tonight you'll hear from me very briefly before you hear from some expert voices with the content area. And so with that said, just as a reminder for the purpose and outcomes of our committee you see here, things we covered last time is that this is really about an opportunity to bring together a community representative committee to come towards consensus on recommendations to share with the broader community for input about the capital needs of the district. And ultimately, this will create a strategic capital improvement plan to be able to bring toward the board for approval should the district decide to go for a bond in 2026. And so to do that, we have a series of 6 meetings tonight, which is the second, to really dive into specific areas, look at some data, hear some perspectives, to start talking about prioritizations and rationale to move towards these consensus opportunities here. So just wanted to kind of reground us back in our purpose. And as you'll see here, we went over the broad infographic diagram that you'll see here, flow chart. The work of the Bond Development Committee really falls in these first 3 buckets that you see in the yellow circle or gold circle here. And so tonight we're going to get a chance to get some additional data, do some group input and processing of that data toward talking about what feels urgent and some priorities as well. So looking forward to really diving in tonight as a group. And in meeting 1, we kicked this off by building community as a development committee, bond development committee. We built a shared understanding on some key data points, specifically around enrollment, utilization within the district, as well as an understanding of physical conditions to start really thinking through, as we're preparing for a bond in the future, what is it that we're kind of thinking through that is strategically aligned to where the district is and where the district's looking to go in alignment with that strategic plan. And we had a group discussion around some of those strategic buckets to start preparing and kind of priming our minds for what we're going to dive into further tonight as well. And so we talked through 6 key buckets as a group. One of which was buildings and systems, safety and security, technology, college and career pathways, extracurriculars, as well as health and wellness. And we talked through this after talking through enrollment, as well as capacity utilization and physical conditions, because ultimately bonds for schools are not just about addressing capital capacity and utilization needs for districts. They often are, but not solely for that purpose. They are really used to address key areas of the district's strategic plan. That can be a variety of factors to really support longevity, optimization, as well as the quality of programs and facilities within the district, as you see up here. And that ultimately these come together towards a strategic capital improvement plan. And so we laid this groundwork as a group in the first meeting and talked about how each of these circles are equal size, equal measure right now. But as we start talking through prioritization and looking through the data, we might see that these circles get various sizes based off the needs within these buckets, based off the dollar amounts that may be associated, and the percentage of resources that may be needed to help actualize these toward a bond as well. And so tonight, we're going to really get a chance to dive into 2 of the specific circles. And so before we do that, I wanted to hand the mic over to Travis to give us a little more context and set some purpose with our group.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you for your leadership preparing for this meeting. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to thank you all before a couple comments. Just thank you for your volunteerism. I learned something at Rotary Club the other day, and this math isn't going to add up for each of you, but try it out. If we spend 8 hours sleeping and 8 hours doing work, then there's another 8 hours. And the conversation was, what do you do with the other 8 hours of your life? And you're here helping a school district develop a bond program. So that's pretty cool. You don't sleep 8 hours or work 8 hours, I get it. But try it out with your neighbors. Just a couple of quick comments. Capital construction bonds, general obligation bonds. It took me a while to learn this vocabulary. And we didn't say this the first meeting, I don't think. Bonds pay for construction and maintenance of things and refurbishing of things and investment in technology. They can't pay for people, with some very minor exceptions, like paying for the people who help us implement the bond. We can't pay for really good ideas that came out of last time, like teachers to help with social emotional learning and school resource officers. So as we continue with this conversation, just keep in mind stuff versus people and operating costs. Point of clarification I was asked to make. Also, I commented last time that we are declining in our enrollment, and a smart person would ask, if they knew that we were declining in enrollment, why wouldn't you just shut down some schools and consolidate? It is true that that's one consideration when we talk about optimization, but at this moment, we don't have immediate plans to close any schools. We are having an ongoing conversation about utilization, and you can do a spreadsheet of how many students are in each school related to the capacity of each school. But one thing that I wanted to tell this group is that whereas 20 years ago, we could build a school and say that school could fit about 650 students, today we have programs that we need to run in addition to our classrooms. So picture an elementary school. We have spaces now for non-categorical special education programs. We have classrooms for teaching English learners. 1 in 5 students in our district is an English learner. We have classrooms that are motor spaces and re-regulation of students who have become dysregulated. So if you were to go through and do an audit of how much the capacity of each school is, minus 3 classrooms, you'd come up with a different number. So I'm happy to share more about that someday. And we may get to a place in Hillsboro where we talk about consolidating schools and using our facilities for other purposes. But for right now, it's not part of our bond conversation. So I just want to throw that on the table because you're smart to ask that question. With that, I'll pass it back over to our crew. Evan, thank you for the opportunity to say welcome.
Yeah. Thanks, Travis. Appreciate it. So as shared within that context, today we're going to dive into 2 of these buckets. Specifically, you're going to get a chance to hear from some experts within the district around buildings and systems, as well as technology. So you're going to hear a little bit about what is that? What does that mean for Hillsboro? What is some of the key data there for consideration and some of the recommendations of things that could potentially come up in the future bond for consideration. In terms of format, you're going to hear from a crew through buildings and systems, and then hear about technology. And then we're going to take a We're going to get a brief break between the two. And then after we hear from technology, you're going to get a chance as a group to discuss both of those buckets. So I'll be able to structure our time based off of where we have. So we're going to save group discussion for the end after hearing from both of these groups this evening. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to Saida and Dave to kick us off, and Maya will be joining them as well. One portion here too.
Can I say one thing before
Please, yeah.
Just in case people are wondering about the odd setup happening up here. So this microphone, essential. This will help all of you hear. However, it's this owl is the source of how people online are hearing us. So it's very critical that we have good sound coming into this owl, or else our online participants won't be able to hear. So if later when you're sharing out, we ask you to come up front, it's not to embarrass you. It's so that everybody can hear what's being said. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Is this loud enough? Yes? All right. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, please. So I'm here to set the stage, and I'm here with my colleagues Dave Peterson and Maya Hawking, and they're going to go into much more detail on buildings and systems that we're going to be discussing and analyzing and looking at through multiple perspectives. But I'm gonna basically give you an overview and set the stage and prepare all of you for that more a deeper dive of information. Next slide, please. So briefly, let's talk about what we're actually going to talk about today. We're going to be looking at everything from HVAC systems to, you've heard this before, building envelopes. So our windows, our doors, looking at our roofs, looking at our electrical systems, looking at lighting upgrades. That's going to be the focus of our presentation today. We will not be talking about safety or athletics. There's going to be another time for that. And a little later this afternoon, my colleague Derek is going to be talking about technology. So our focus will be purely buildings and systems and maintenance facilities. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we talk about the approaches to maintaining buildings, there are two approaches that we take ongoing throughout the year. There's a preventative maintenance approach, and those are routine and scheduled. Those happen on a daily basis. They happen randomly. Let's say a light bulb goes out, you'll have a custodian or one of our facility maintenance staff members go out and change out a light bulb or a ballast. Doors and locks break occasionally, and so we'll have our locksmith go out and repair that door or that doorknob. We have controllers and motors that break, and we repair those. We have planned maintenance as well. There's something we do every year just to keep things going, just for upkeep purposes. For example, we pave our parking lots. There's a schedule that happens. We also stripe them because the striping fades and wears off. So we do that on a regular basis. We refinish our gymnasium floors. Actually, we refinish all of our floors, right? So every year, our custodial crew, they go into our schools. You may have seen this. They take everything out of a classroom. They clean that classroom. They scrub, they strip, and we re-wax those floors, and they put everything back in. And that's just part of our ongoing maintenance, right? There are some factors, and you're going to hear about restoration and replacement in the next slides. But our tendency is to, as much as possible, go towards restoration, then replacement. A couple of reasons. The main one is cost. If we can prolong the life of certain systems and structures, it's better cost effective for us. We can get more out of it. So we always move towards restoration if at all possible, but there are factors that play into making that decision or making any of the decisions we make with respect to building maintenance. Time of year is critical. We live in Oregon. There are certain things that we are unable to do at certain times of the year. It's not optimal. It's not optimal to pour concrete when it's pouring down rain. So we may push certain projects further back. We also look at time of year as far as students and whether students are in school. So our tendency is if the project is, or the planned maintenance is larger in scope, you'll see that we'll be going into buildings during spring break, during winter break. Summertime is a great time to do so. Even though we do have summer programs going in our buildings, our tendency is to work on a building, and then when the program's over, we come in, we do the maintenance, and we get the school ready for the start of the school year. So, and then we have a prioritization list. So we have a long list of building maintenance aspects that we need to cover, and we prioritize. We determine what are some things that need our immediate attention, and what are some things that we can defer to spring break or to winter break, and maybe patch it along and make sure that we're whole until we get to that larger period of time that allows our crew and maybe an outside company to come in and address those issues. So all of those factors we take into consideration when making these decisions. I think I got everything there. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next two slides, this one and the next one, it's going to be, we're going to be talking a little bit about looking at our facilities budget transparently. It's roughly about $2.5 million a year, give or take, mostly take. And it covers the maintenance, the routine things I just discussed, and many other routine maintenance aspects of buildings throughout our district. And, you know, if you add schools and then you add support buildings, if we don't include portables, if we don't include standalone gyms, we're talking about roughly 40 plus buildings in our district that we routinely have maintenance on. So the $2.5 million covers those minor repairs, those basic planned or routine maintenance aspects. There are additional things that we are obligated to do, right? They're regulatory in nature, and we have to do it to keep our doors open, basically. And so there's water testing, there's air quality testing. The list is there. We test backflows, and if we see an issue in any of those areas as we go through the testing, we need to mitigate, we need to fix it, right? That's our obligation. So the $2.5 million covers your everyday routine maintenance plus all the regulatory required aspects of testing and mitigation that we must do to all 42 plus buildings in our district. Keep that in mind, 2.5 million. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the cost, and these are general rough costs. We made a note there. They're not, they're current costs, and they're very rough estimates. Not very, they're rough estimates of the cost of replacing some of the things that Dave and Maya are going to talk about. Just so, for example, if we look at the difference between, remember the restoration versus replacement, if you take an average 80,000 square foot roof, approximately $4.5 million to restore that roof. That will give us X number of years until we actually have to replace it down the line, potentially the next bond, versus replacing it altogether, which is just under $5 million. So we will always go towards restoration, if possible, to prolong the life. Routine maintenance plus restoration allows us to extend the life of our buildings and our systems, and also our finances and our resources, financial resource, and also making sure that we're being good stewards with our assets. And so another example would be flooring. And the difference in amounts is because of the amount, how many square feet we have to actually look at. So in this case, I think we've identified about 16 sites in our district that need new flooring. The price ranges anywhere from $10,000 to up to $800,000 to replace flooring, whether it's removing and polishing floors or removing carpet, let's say, and replacing it with carpet and all the mitigation that goes with that. That's the range. It's about $8 to $12 a square foot. So these are just some examples, and I gave you other examples there, but it just highlights that delta between our annual budget to do routine maintenance and the amount and the cost that it takes to actually do conduct some associated with these capital projects that cost a lot of money and provide longevity of our buildings. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've talked about end of life. You're going to hear this over and over again. You may also hear like lifespan, life cycle. All of these talk about how long things typically last. If well maintained, and the analogy is your vehicle, my vehicle, right? If I go routine oil changes, I check the tires, I do everything I need to do, that car will last longer and drive longer on the road. It's the same with the building. It's the same with a roof or an HVAC system or carpet. If we take care of what we have, it will last longer typically. Obviously, the quality of the product matters, but generally roofs are anywhere between 20 and 30 years. Again, we live in Oregon, so it's a little wetter here. So we have to be mindful of inspections and making sure that we're doing the patchwork necessary so there isn't infiltration within the membrane to get into the building. So we do those inspections on a regular basis and so on and so forth. Boilers, water heaters, there is a life. And so we have lots of systems right now that are coming to their end. It's gone through the cycle. We're pushing it along to get to a bond so we are able to replace them. The restoration has happened. We've done the patchwork and we are now in the position where we need to replace these things. And this is just a reminder. We know we need to make improvements. We're very thoughtful with our decision making. Dave, Maya, and our entire team, we are really meticulous about how we spend our money and stretching that dollar. And we do want to be responsible stewards of all our finances, our public assets. And I just provided a very general overview of some of those systems. And Dave and Maya will go into further detail and talk to you about and actually show you pictures so you can get a better understanding of what we're talking about as far as the systems. And also, Maya is going to also talk a little bit about why it's important to replace these systems and how we can do it in a cost-effective way using incentives that are available to us. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dave.
Thanks, Saida. Once again, I'm Dave Peterson. I'm the Director of Facilities for the district. What I'm going to be talking to you about is exactly what Saida laid out just a few moments ago. So we're going to start out tonight with HVAC. So HVAC is what carries the air into all the offices, all the classrooms, conditioned air. If it's calling for heating, if it's calling for cooling, and keeps everybody comfortable. That's the definition in a nutshell that's up there. So we have in the district right now 15 HVAC mechanical systems, which are the mechanical side is boilers, HVAC units, pumps, items like that. And we have 7 HVAC control systems throughout the district. Now, control system is basically the brains of operating the temperature in the conditioned spaces throughout the building. So I did a diagram up here to hopefully simplify it for people. If not, ask me questions at the end. But basically, every school has a computer and a controls operating system. That computer, the user is putting, I want this room to be 68 degrees in. That message is being sent down the line to controllers out in the field. they're picking up the message and saying, hey, I need Travis's office at 68 and it's 74. You know, give me some cooling. That all is monitored on a computer system at the school and also a computer system at facilities. And also out in the field, we have laptops to review and look into those systems. As the control systems gets older, the controllers giving the message to the end of the line start failing. In a high school, you have hundreds of controllers firing pumps, firing motors, firing all sorts of the building operation systems of that building. So as those systems start failing and getting old, we're replacing parts to keep them going. But at the same time, the new parts and the old parts have a hard time communicating. So we have to go out for patches with the vendors, being Johnson Controls or Allerton. And this both is inefficient for the trades because we can't just do stuff computer. We got to go out, look at it, research it, as opposed to dedicating to other work orders and situations. So that's where we're at with quite a few of our buildings. We're still getting by. There's still air moving. We're patching stuff as we go, but we're at a time and a place where we're almost on borrowed time. ADA supports. The last bond, we did do quite a bit of ADA bathrooms in the older sites that didn't have that option. But we do, through looking through ADA assessments and also work order problems that come through with, new students and staff that are in our schools, we run into the old school way of the way the building was constructed. You got high thresholds, which hold up wheels on wheelchairs, walkers, and other equipment. You have doors that back in the day, it wasn't 32 inches. It was put a door in here that are, 27 inches wide. And then some bathrooms that we know that we have to do a little bit of work with because like this is probably 26 inches wide, right? So we're looking at all the older buildings, basically all the buildings besides the ones that we did in the last bond or did major updates to the restrooms to get better ADA accessibility in our buildings. And that goes with playgrounds, which I'm going to be talking about a little further down the line. Oh, right here.
Right.
All right. So playgrounds, everything has the same pattern. If you can see, playgrounds are the same thing. Every 7 to 8 years, Miracle Play decides I'm going to reinvent the slide. So we have this playground that's super old, and we have a slide that, believe it or not, a slide can cost anywhere upwards of $12,000. We make it as safe so nobody's getting, punctured or cut or anything. But there comes a time where that slide it's past its life. So sometimes that slide we can't get anymore. Now you can get a whole new slide apparatus to bolt to that playground, right? But then what happens when that part fails that new part's on? Then you're gonna have a void in between your playgrounds. So a lot of our playgrounds are in this situation. They're safe. Don't get me wrong. We do annual inspections on them. We replace. We look at chains. But once again, they're getting tuckered out and tired. Along with that, we want to make them. Last bond, we did a lot of the new playgrounds. Any playground that we put in, any playground that we touch, we put the rubber matting. Year-round play, ADA accessible, inclusive, year-round play. So that's what we're really aiming for this bond when it goes to playgrounds in the district. Electrical, okay. We have six sites. So this is power distribution, electrical panels, switches, anything that turns electricity on and off. We have 6 buildings that are really old. Yeah, we can keep them up when the breakers trip, when the breakers do funny things, because they're old, they're getting tired. We chase around, we replace the breaker. But what happens with an old breaker that's been turned on and off in its lifetime so many times, and it's calling for a trip, and the breaker doesn't trip? Like, you got a potential fire hazard. So that's what we're looking at in our older buildings too, the fire life safety aspect into the power distribution system. So the next one is lighting. Lighting, we have lighting to do all over the district. Brought to you by HB 2531, which bans the sale of fluorescent lighting in Oregon to buy. So by 2030, we got to have all of our buildings to LED. Now, this is a cost up front, but on the flip side, LEDs, I mean, everybody knows LEDs are going to save energy, lots of electricity. So there's a positive to doing it too. The next thing, fire life safety, fire panels. We have old and new mixed, partly because we did a remodel, we did an upgrade, we need fire protection. We're going to add to it using the same head unit, but you get old and new trying to compete, and then you run into problems. So these problems are particularly a problem for facilities, because when you do get a fire panel that goes on the fritz, we have to set up a fire watch, which means in some schools we got to have 2 people there at all times while it's occupied. So that's even an event at 8 o'clock at night in the auditorium. We got to run fire watch around the whole building. So while we seek the fix or order parts. So that's that. We've got fire panels. There's 10 out of all our buildings. So not too bad, but we know we have some work to do on those. Next slide, please. Building envelope is, walls, windows, anything on the outside of the building. Our roofs are probably the overall problem going into this bond. We have 29 roofs out of our, I always say 43 sites, give or take, that either need a restoration, or in some cases only half the roofs need a restoration or a replacement, depending on if there was a phase of building throughout the years. We chase roof leaks all winter long. I mean, we chase them, we fix them, we find stuff like this up there, which happens a lot in the summer. We get the UV, the hot stuff bubbles, it cracks, and then we cut out and then patch with tar to prevent the leak. So we chase leaks, and part of it is just like a crack in metal. It over time, it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So over time you chase, and you can get up on some of these roofs and see the tar roads. Basically, they look like streets sometimes. And the last one is windows and paint. We have I think I didn't write it down. I want to say 6 or 9. That's my dyslexia coming out. But anyways, we have some buildings that are original. 1982, that's Glencoe. Those are original windows. So we know we have to do mechanical upgrades, make heating and cooling more efficient. So we want to come and really focus on windows too, so we're not throwing all those savings back out the window. So we're not. So, and then the last is we have paint. And this is what I was explaining to Saida. It's an ever-changing world with painting in the district. Sometimes a building looks great, and then we go through like a graffiti spell. And yeah, we paint the building with the original paint, but the UV has taken the glow, the pop out of the original paint. So it's not the best picture. So you get some stuff like that. And we want to like focus in and kind of dress everything up before, on our way out. And the next thing, you just heard all the negatives. So now you get to hear all the positives with Maya.
Thanks, Dave. Dave's pretty positive. He's fun. It's my honor to be here today and have this opportunity to share with you how we stretch our dollar, or one way that we do when we spend money on buildings and systems. So my role with the district is that I'm the resource conservation manager. So anytime there's an opportunity to reach out to these partners and see if there's money available to help support system upgrades or new equipment or what have you, then that's what I get to do. So these two sources, we are very fortunate to be in a region that we can take advantage of these two really critical partners, and not just during bond time. This is all the time, anytime that we're doing any kind of building work. And it has anything to do with building performance, with the possibility of energy efficiency improvements. We get to reach out to these folks. Energy Trust of Oregon, it's based on the incentive offers are based on improved efficiencies. That's a broad range of things. It can be windows, it can be HVAC, it can be lighting, anything that makes our buildings run more efficiently. All buildings in the district are eligible. Very positive there. Opportunities are assessed, so it's a start to finish situation. They come in, they take a look, they assess how we're doing right now. We implement the project, and then we do the project. Then they come back and verify that we did everything we said, and they hand us a check. I have a picture of it. Their offerings are adjusted annually. Generally, you can kind of predict what's happening. But as the climate, literally, the climate and the needs are out there, they do make an adjustment. One example would be that they've passed, Dave touched on the fluorescent lighting ban. So what has happened with that is right now there's incentives. But once in a year or two, when LED becomes the standard, incentive opportunities are going to go down dramatically. So those incentives are not going to be able to support paying for projects on lighting. So the Oregon Department of Energy, we all have, if you go home, look at your bill, maybe you have, maybe you cry over it, I don't know. There's a public purpose charge program line item on your bill if you're in a PGE or Pacific Power region, which I'm assuming everybody here is. And the state takes that, collects it, and reallocates it out to different areas. And 10% of that goes to public schools. So we get a check every month for our little bit. It's not a little bit. It grows pretty rapidly. And it comes into the district and it gets put away in an account, and we get to hold it until we have just the right project that they can say, guess what? You get to reimburse yourself out of that fund and help pay for that project. And I have towards the end, I have an example of that, a pretty good example. So that's how that program works. It's only for school buildings. So the building we're in right now, this would not apply to that. They just, well, a couple years ago, they extended the program. It started in 2012. They extended it to 2036. As they get closer to that date, they'll probably reassess and see where we're at, see if they can continue it. So next slide. Okay, these two resources are out there. They're just a little hard to get to. We recently applied for the U.S. Department of Energy Inflation Reduction Act tax credits. Wow. For clean energy projects that actually came out of our last bond. So the Biden-Harris administration put this IRA Act tax credit program into play, and it is still out there, although the current administration has maybe new thoughts on it, but it is still out there. So if we have any clean energy projects, which is clean energy that is put into place that wasn't there before. For example, an EV bus. If we replace a traditional bus with an EV bus, there's tax credits available. If we put solar where there wasn't solar, there's tax credits available. It's pretty limited, but the good news on that one is if the project qualifies, it's a guarantee. We just have to apply for it and go and get it. The U.S. Department of Energy Renew America's Schools is still out there. It's been out there for several years. These are more like a grant or a prize model rather than a reimbursement, which is what these others are. The only thing about those is there's a lot of people, there's a lot of school districts that are looking to that program. It's highly competitive. So not that it's not out there, but it is out there. It's just harder to get. So why does it make sense? Well, it seems pretty straightforward that reaching for incentives makes sense financially. It stretches the dollars. Projects that we couldn't do off bond cycle, their projects can grow and get big, and then they're really hard to do if you don't have the money to do them. So a lot of, like I mentioned with the incentives, is we have to actually do the project before we get the money back. So if you don't have upfront costs, then you can't leverage these funding programs. So inefficient systems are just naturally going to be high utility costs. So we've talked about systems, we've talked about buildings, we haven't even touched on the utility part yet. So there's a whole lot of utility savings embedded in all of this that we're talking about here today. So inefficient systems are also very prone to higher maintenance costs. We talked about the lighting. There's incentives now. They probably won't be available for too much longer. It's an attractive incentive package right now. And then the conversation is always is really leaning towards not just money, which is a big thing, but renewables, clean energy, resiliency, the capability of integrating systems, and ultimately healthy environments. All of that plays into what we're talking about here. And these incentives are definitely out there to help improve our interior and, well, interior spaces, but for our learning and working environment. So this is an example of a recent project that we did actually out of our maintenance budget, which was, does anybody remember that figure? 2.5 million. So this project here is a single school, our largest high school, HVAC control system only. So we're not talking about mechanical. $1.5 million to do that job, to do that project. It was a full retrofit. And then we replaced the boilers. So in total, the project was 2.2 million. Dave, do you think you got that in your wallet? No, okay. So that's pretty close to 2.5 million, but the reason we were able to do it was because of these incentives. ETO kicked in a really large check for $635,000, and the Public Purpose Charge Fund kicked in the rest. So out of Dave's budget was zero. And on top of that was projected $140,000 a year in savings off of utilities that we get as a result of this project. And there we are, being happy with our big check. And I think that was my last slide. So thank you very much. Oh, we're going to Q&A.
Yeah. I think if there are some questions came up in the chat, I'm sure you guys all have some questions about buildings and systems. Maybe Saida and Dave could come back up here so that if there are questions asked, they can answer you on the mic and everybody can hear. I can kind of maybe restate some questions so that our online folks can hear. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask? Clarification? Wow. Everybody totally gets buildings and systems. Yes, go ahead, Stephanie.
I know staffing is the largest cost in any school district. If we save money on utilities, can that money be put towards staffing in the long run, not as the next year?
Question about if we are able to save money on utilities, can that money be translated into money for staffing? I think anytime that we're able to free up general fund dollars, then that capacity exists to go toward our priorities, which are ensuring that we have adequate staffing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
The rebates and incentives, are those earmarked dollars when they come back in, or do those go to general fund?
Are rebates and incentives, when those dollars come in, are they earmarked or do they go into the general fund?
Great question. So it depends on the incentive. The money that is currently sitting in our SB 1149, which is the public purpose, is earmarked for energy projects. When it comes back or when we reimburse, let's say we did a project and they reimburse, that can go to wherever the district decides that it needs to go. The ETO funding is similar, it's just a different model. Once it comes back, I mean, the intent is that if we're getting energy related money, that would go back into an energy project so that we can keep a cycle going within our building maintenance. Yeah.
I think the other point of clarification, especially on the Liberty project that was exampled up there, we had to expend all of that money before the reimbursement came back in. So the reimbursement was just for that project. I can imagine there might be some other structures, but for the most part, if you are receiving incentive, it's probably to reimburse for exactly that project, not to then be available for other places. Is that accurate?
I think ideally, I think Maya spoke to this. Ideally, we would use incentive money and keep reusing that money for other projects. So once we have the money, let's say it's bond dollars, and we are able to work on a project, once we get those incentives back, ideally would go to the next project and just keep going and reuse and recycle those funds as best possible.
Yeah, I think another important thing to note, part of the reason why we wanted to bring up incentive opportunities is because one of the things that we have done historically, and of course intend to continue doing, is when we are putting together our bond package and looking at all of our priorities, we want to look at ways we can maximize opportunities for partnership, for incentives, for outside sources of funding, things like the state level awesome grant that make our dollars go further, because then that allows us to do more projects. So if there are projects that we identify as priorities that do qualify for a partnership and or incentive, then that just makes it all the more cost effective for us. Mary Kay.
Do we have any one-offs where the systems are cross-wired and discovered? For example, fine arts wing versus the auditorium, freezing in the fine arts wing, super hot in the auditorium.
Only here at the administration center where it's.
That's going back to most likely a control issue with the controller out in the field. So this is off topic. Has there been a work order put in? All right, we will look into that tomorrow. I did want to say one thing at the end of what I said is I've been in this circus for a while, or the trades for a while. The trades.
Fiction organization.
Okay, and the price right now, you see all these prices, they're big numbers, but it's not gonna get cheaper. I mean, I've watched over the past 6 months a hot water heater that cost me $16,000 now costs me $23,000. So it just keeps going and going and going. So I know everybody probably knew that, but it made me feel good.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's so much a question, but a curiosity. You mentioned all the $2.2 million that was done at Liberty. Isn't there any like warranty work? Isn't Liberty a relatively new school? So are there warranty periods on a lot of this? A lot of these items that we picked up by that? 2 years?
It's 22 years old.
Oh, 22 years. Liberty's 22 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So typically,
Yeah.
when you hit the
Who's ever talking?
you go.
Well, yeah, it's over 20 years old. So we've got, without getting too far into it, we had a control system that was not user friendly, we'll say. It was a one and done system. It didn't play well with others. So we took an opportunity to tell it was time to go and bring in the one that's the district standard. So there was warranty. We're still under warranty work for that particular project, but it's not a very long warranty for the controls. Yeah. You say.
No, we did it.
This is not the last time we'll revisit this topic. I mean, down the road, certainly you'll hear more about kind of what I keep referring to as the top of the funnel when it comes to facilities related desires for this bond. You know, just to give you a little sneak peek, I think the total for if we got everything we wanted to do roofing projects alone is in the order of $67 million. Just to give you a sense of scale. And when we're talking about having 40 plus buildings across the district, you know, those things add up. And they've got dollars lined up for all the projects related to HVAC and the ADA, all the different types of projects we have some numbers for. And so once we kind of get through these next few meetings where we're talking about, you know, really specific targeted areas, like next you'll hear about technology, and at our next meeting, you'll hear about safety and security systems. And then later we'll hear about career and college pathways and health and safety and other things. Once we kind of get through all of that, then we'll start kind of looking at those big spreadsheets and the hard numbers and start making some determinations about what can fit in our bond package, what the priorities of our community are, and some of the different factors we need to take into consideration as we're winnowing that list down to something that's manageable. So it's not your last chance to ask questions, but I think it seems like this is a great time to take our 5-minute break. Please do so and come back at 5 o'clock. Did you want to say something, or no, we're good?
Do you have questions online?
Are there questions online?
One question just came in.
Oh, one question just came in online.
Jessica's asking, does Hillsboro facilities handle all of the HVAC and building maintenance in-house, or do we contract out certain services?
For the rest of the online folks, the question, well, you see it, you're in the chat, so here you go, Dave.
Yeah, so we have an in-house trades department. We have locksmiths, we have carpenters, we have HVAC, we have electrical, and do everything that we are set up for. There does come some jobs that require, heavy excavation or something that's out of the facility's wheelhouse, essentially. And those are the jobs that we go out, collect bids for, and go through a bidding process.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, break time and come back at 5.
All right. Here's the quote you called it. Wow. Yeah. I would think-
That's 6%. Well, I'm currently doing 6.5.
Oh, you
People.
Yeah, I
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Where do you like
Write letters to the paper too. Yeah, that's what we need response. We are. So yeah.
Very well. Yeah. When is your
I'm saying they were trying to decide.
Yeah.
Yeah, any license for the service. Your license. All that stuff. If I was giving it, yeah, like here's you said. No. No, you share. Yeah, I think.
Those monitors, though, look how. I was part of Look to your eyes. You know, I need you to George. Yeah.
That's next to it. Yeah, so then I'm gonna start.
Something else. We got temporary.
So another.
I was gonna say something. It was not built in. You knew how to catch it. I just didn't want to go. Sure, it's good, it's good. But last year, she has other needs, like, you know.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna make our way back to our seats and get rolling here with the next portion. So you just got to hear from Saida, Dave, and Maya on buildings and systems, and now Derek's going to come up and share some information around technology before we go into some group discussions. Without further ado, Derek.
Hey, thank you, thank you. I know Dave's kind of a tough act to follow, but I appreciate the encouragement, so thank you for that. Good evening, everybody. My name is Derek Brown. I'm the District Information and Technology Officer, and I'm going to share a little bit of information for you about technology or technology services. Big words that we use, and sometimes they're not completely clear about. We're not completely clear about what we mean when we say those things. So I hope one of the things I'm able to do tonight maybe is demystify technology and technology services for you. A few things just to get started. We have quite a few things that we do in service of students, families, and staff here at the district. And I won't go line by line through those, but network and infrastructure is a pretty big part of what we do. I'll talk in a little bit more detail about what that means, supporting classrooms. We manage a lot of devices, a lot of hardware as well. And software and application support. As you all know, we definitely are living in the modern age of technology. So we do everything with applications these days. A lot of information systems and data related work goes on. And then of course, cybersecurity is another big part of our work as we're moving forward. About 18,000 students, give or take, 2,600 or so staff, and around 800 classrooms. And those are just important contextual numbers for you to keep in mind as I start talking through some of those buckets for you a little bit. I'm going to start with Chromebooks. Chromebooks have become certainly since the COVID era, have become a pretty standard item in just about any classroom that you walk into anymore. Prior to COVID, we were certainly using Chromebooks, and many districts have been moving toward more and more Chromebooks. But COVID became a moment where everybody got forced into that arena maybe and had to accelerate their timelines a little bit if they weren't already there. We are a one-to-one district, and that's a term that we use in public education. It just means we basically have a Chromebook for every student. And depending on the level, students take those Chromebooks home. Here, elementary students we ask them to leave their Chromebooks at school, and at the secondary levels, they are able to take them home. That varies a little bit from one district to the next. Typical life cycle for a Chromebook is around 6 years, really depends on the manufacturer. I will say that we're probably pretty lucky if we get 6 years out of a Chromebook. They could tell some stories, those Chromebooks, I think. But we do hope to get 6 years. And in some cases, we can get more than that. We always purchase them with a 4-year warranty as well. And we have staff located in schools and here at the administrative center that are able to do some repairs. Usually we can do things like keyboards, screens, and batteries. Those are things that we typically can take care of. In some cases, we can do a little bit more than that. If there's damage beyond that, we utilize that warranty to send it in and get a replacement. So, and then some numbers, again, on just repairs and Chromebooks, replacements rather, of Chromebooks last year. Again, just to give you a little bit of context as to how much work and maintenance they require to keep them active and in the inventory and helping students in their learning environments. Classroom-based technology. So we have kind of a standard setup, if you will, in each classroom. And so that includes the teacher themselves having a laptop. In some specialized learning spaces, they might have a desktop or something else of that nature, but most have a laptop. We have projectors in every classroom. We have document cameras. We also have voice amplification systems that are used more by some and less by others. But those are technology tools that are out in our classrooms as well. CTE classrooms, of course, have very different technology needs, and those are addressed on an as-needed basis. But we know that they have unique equipment and unique learning spaces that they're facilitating in. And I think we'll talk more about that when we do the college and career pathways presentation in the next session or two. So that kind of represents the standard classroom setup, if you will, from a technology perspective. Network services. So the network, Dave referred to it a little bit when he was doing his presentation talking about HVAC. Every system that we run, as you all know, connects into our network. So whether it's HVAC or the security system, the badging system for the doors, and the list goes on and on. In order to maintain the network, the network requires maintenance and it requires replacement of certain components at various times. So I listed a few things, and these might be words that don't mean a whole lot to you, but there's just a lot of things that have to connect together to make sure that the internet is up and running and safe for you when you come in, whether you're a teacher in a classroom or you're working in the payroll office at the administrative center or anything in between. So we have servers, routers, access points, switches. I was looking around the room here. I'm sure there's an AP right there. So they're everywhere you go. And that's how we very happily take care of all of our emails every day. Those things, Dave referred to it when he was talking about facilities as well. We typically get something in the neighborhood of 6 to 10 years. Again, a little dependent on the manufacturer. And sometimes we get curveballs from manufacturers as well, where they make promises to us and we get a few years into it and find out that they're not going to support that particular piece of equipment anymore. But by and large, we can get something in the 6 to 10 range on most of our devices. There are some other systems, other services that are also technology based that are derived specifically from the network. I named a few here because they are visible to us. So things like our phone system. Our phone system is going to be going end of life in 2029, which feels like it's a long time from right now. It's not very long from right now, especially through the lens of changing out an entire phone system. The current phone system also, we no longer can update it starting here in just a few months. So on January 1st, we will not be able to update it with security updates. That doesn't mean that it stops working. It just means that there might be some functionality issues that come up, and there might be some risk-related things that happen that we aren't able to address. So we named that as a system that definitely needs attention and would need to be handled probably on the front end of the bond. PA systems in our schools, we have a mix of old PA systems, new PA systems, and so those types of things in gymnasiums, cafeterias, things like that. They need some attention, and the boardroom audiovisual setup in here is a mix of lots of old and new equipment, and sometimes it gets a little fussy and always at the wrong moment. That's why we're using this today. So things like that also will need some attention through this process as well. Cybersecurity, I just wanted to say a few things about that. So, again, it's a little bit of an abstract term, and I think people have different definitions in their mind of what that means. I just want to share, we think about it through a couple of different lenses. One is the tools. So what kind of tools do you have in place to try to protect your network? Not only protect your network, but protect your users while they're on the network. So we use things like antivirus software. We have firewalls. We segment the network so that there are little walls everywhere so that if something bad happens, we can contain it. And we use web filtering and things like that. Those kinds of things are coupled with policies like incident response plans, acceptable use policies for staff and student and other staff training, things like that. So I put it up here as a bond related item because one of the things that we're committed to doing is continuously testing our network. And we do that with partnerships with groups like CISA and organizations like that, where they come in and they try to get in. They try to find soft spots. And through the bond, we can also utilize some resources there to learn more about what where those soft spots might be, and then make the proper upgrades to make sure that we're keeping the network safe. Again, network and users and their data is the primary concern there. So again, these are kind of rough numbers, but I do want to kind of walk through them just a little bit. Devices would end up being kind of the biggest ask in the technology portion of the bond. So student and staff devices, Chromebooks, laptops, we do have a small bit of iPads and things like that out there too. I mentioned the classroom setup, projectors, document cameras, things of that nature are all part of our device management program, the AV systems. Also printers, we use Canon printers, and so those things will all need to be upgraded. The number that I've got listed there, the estimate listed there, $46 million, represents, for most of that gear, represents 2 replenishments, meaning there would be one kind of on the front end of the bond and then another replenishment on the back end of the bond, based on the fact that those items last, again, if we can get about 6 years out of most of that stuff, that's pretty good. The network infrastructure, servers, routers, all the other things, including cybersecurity, is a lower number, and that would probably be a one-time. Most of that would be a one-time item somewhere in the first 3 to 4 years of the bond, I would say. And then some of those things we might try to get a second replenishment through toward the back end of the bond, but that's a lower number there. And then other support systems like phones, intercoms, and upgrading our Wi-Fi is listed as well. That would be one time through the bond. So again, that ends up totaling out to something in the neighborhood of 62, 63 million based on the estimates we've done so far. I also want to say here, and you all know I'm still relatively new to the district. Hillsboro's approach to technology purchases has been to really primarily lean on the bond, particularly for hardware. My budget is pretty close to Saide's and the facilities side. It's around $2.5 million or so, not counting the staffing. Most of that budget we use for some software and other things, licensing fees and things like that. But we really don't do big major purchases of things like Chromebooks and PA systems and things like that out of our annual general fund budget. Really, most of it comes out of the bond. So just want to name that so that you have that historical context as well. Okay, let me pause for a few minutes and see if you all have any questions.
There's a question online. Do we know how we compare with other districts in terms of what we provide to our schools and staff for technology?
The question is, do we know how we compare to other school districts? Oh, yeah, you're right. You're there on the chat. They already know. I learned that just a few minutes ago. I think that we're very comparable to other districts in terms of the classroom setup. That's a pretty standard setup. different ways that people do voice amplification and things like that. One of the, I guess I could probably call this a bit of an innovation that we're starting to see in some districts is teachers want to be able to use Chromebooks or some other kind of device to be able to cast students' work up onto a screen. Clackamas School District, a few other places out on the east side, I'm aware of some on the west side as well, that are starting to experiment with that a little bit. And that's a really great way to get students working in collaborative spaces together and then be able to show work and be able to interact with their work using a stylus or something like that from their table or from their individual seat, wherever they might be, and be able to show that to the whole group in live time. So that's I can think of a couple of examples of folks that are maybe doing something a little bit beyond how we've set up our standard classrooms right now, but I think we're pretty comparable to most of our neighbors.
Evan?
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Derek. So what we're going to get a chance to do now is to dive into some group discussions. So you got to hear about a lot of different things, different areas of focus that were stated explicitly, other areas that were stated in broad categories that might have your wheels turning or wondering about certain aspects to dive into more. And so you're going to get a chance in your groups to use the next, about 25 minutes to just discuss as a group and say, based off of what you've heard from buildings and systems, what are the top 3 to 5 things that feel most urgent to you and why? And then is there anything else you did not hear regarding buildings and systems that you would like to be considered and why? And then you'll get a chance to do the same thing for technology as well. So our time together is going to be both for buildings and systems and technology. I'm setting this up for both discussions because I think we're going to be naturally thinking through both and discussing both. So again, just what are the top 3 to 5 things that feel most urgent to you? And then is there anything else you did not hear regarding these categories tonight that you would like to be considered and why? So my ask is, and I'll be going around to support the tables before jumping online to help with those in Zoom to have a similar conversation with this, is that I would recommend doing almost a round robin type share out in your group and then ask that you guys kind of find the overlap of those. Because at the end of this time, we're going to ask each group to stand up and say, hey, for buildings and systems, these were the 3 priorities that we discussed. For technology, these were the 3 priorities that we discussed. And so this is going to be the first step as we start moving towards consensus as upon development.
Does every group have a note taker? Raise your hand if you're the note taker for your group. That back table need Maya, you're going to do it? Does that back table have a note taker? What about Travis, you're doing up here? I can go back to that back table and be a note taker then. Okay, thank you.
And you all got these packets, it's just to help refresh your memory on any of the concepts that was looked at for both building systems and tech.
What we're going to do is get a chance to just kind of have a conversation as groups, and I'll be our note taker. But we'd love to hear, just given the information that you heard from individuals this evening and what you, what's kind of on your mind right now. What are some of the things that felt most urgent or most pressing that you heard tonight? And feel free to share from buildings and systems and or technology. And I'll capture some notes here to be able to share out, but would love to just hear what's top of mind for you or what you're kind of thinking or wondering as a result of what you heard this evening.
This is Claudia from Glencoe. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Claudia. Yes, thank you.
Yes, I can only see you. So I'm sorry I couldn't be there today, but as far as the buildings, I think what I hear, from my building and others would be definitely the heating situation in our building when I think it was Mayor Kate, who is talking about it when it's cold in one area and 70 degrees in one area and 44 in the other. That's Glencoe. I think heating and cooling is definitely an issue in many buildings. I've been in many different buildings, and that's an issue. That's a priority. Windows a priority. That they showed a building picture, and that's Glencoe, my building. We have original windows, and you can put your finger in and out in some of those little areas. And I know there's buildings that are older than Glencoe. So HVAC, windows, and PA systems are definitely, and phones are definitely an issue. And I think that's an issue across the district. Those would be my top between facilities and a little bit of technology. I was flabbergasted at the cost of computers and Chromebooks. And the more I listen to my staff, being a high school principal, I mean, do we really need Chromebooks? Do we need to be a one-on-one, one-to-one district? They get lost. Is the vein of our existence at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, they're destroyed. It's a conversation I think that needs to be had, because a lot of parents don't like it. A lot of kids don't like it. A lot of staff don't like it. There's pros and cons. So I wonder, does it have to be one-to-one, or can it be a classroom set? So something to think about.
Thank you for sharing that, Bonnie. That's great to kick us off. I've noted here that a lot of residents with HVAC, both controls and systems, Windows, PA phones, and are wondering of saying, hey, is it worth investing to continue with Chromebooks as a one-to-one, or is there some more exploration that needs to get done, and
Sure.
an opportunity to, whether it's maybe like through piloting with funds from the bonds, to look at alternatives or options to be able to consider different pathways moving forward.
Especially at the elementary level.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Hey, Evan. One thing I didn't hear that I was a little curious about is about bathrooms. So I heard about bathrooms needing ADA modifications. And Claudia's here, so she's a principal. Maybe she can give some insight on this. But I know that there's been so many issues, safety concerns, bullying concerns with students, especially at high school, around bathrooms. I remember students saying, that little crack between the stalls is like big enough where people are like, peeking and, all these things. And so that I don't want to use the bathrooms because they don't feel safe. I didn't hear anything outside of ADA modifications on how to improve any of our bathrooms, literally improving like how they're built, or that, as well as like the gender bathrooms, all gender bathrooms, and maybe even like security around the bathroom. So I'm just curious if I missed something, or is that something that we don't see as a need right now?
Well,
Hi, Jessica. It is a huge need. Buildings are old, and I know exactly the cracks because we had to purchase little metal things to put, the partitions, the door partitions. There's a big enough crack that you can look, and you can do it I dare you to go into the bathroom in the building you're in, and you can see the first stall you lock. If you go into the stall and you look left, you can see the person who's using the toilet. So those are the cracks that we're talking about. The bathrooms in the old buildings, Glencoe included, they need to be repaired. They're broken, they're falling apart. Some of them don't have doors. So that's something that needs to be assessed. They need to be redone. They just need to be redone, boys and girls. We all have gender neutral bathrooms. They're all new at the high school level and at the new buildings. I'm looking at Tamarack right now at my window at home. But there's some retrofits that need to be done for sure, 100%. Also, to add to that, with technology, we do need vaping devices, smoke detectors in every bathroom, at least at the high school and middle school level. They're cost prohibitive for me to do it. It's a 20,000 plus to do that for my building. And it's something that we need to talk about as technology, or even the safety piece. So Jessica, thanks for bringing it up. That's something that needs to be considered as well.
Jeremy and Billy Joe, I see that you guys have hands up as well. But just to add on to probably everything you just shared there too, I'm I'm noting this, knowing that we're going to be having safety and security
yeah.
presenting next week.
It's on my
I'm
list.
making sure
Yeah.
we're able, but like some of these are very gray areas in terms of like, okay, does that fall in facilities, tech, those? So we want to make sure we capture these to be able to share on that, to make sure that we can come to that discussion to address those needs too. So let's appreciate that. I'm going to go kind of order of the hands that the hands that popped up. So Jeremy, your hand came first, and then Billy will go with yours, and then David, I see that your hand came up after that. There.
Hi there. So I'm actually using my husband's account. This is Amanda Marcotte. Hello.
Hi, Amanda. Sorry about that. Thank you.
No worries. I couldn't figure out how to change my name. But anyway, one thing I will say that I do actively disagree with is the lack of or not upgrading or looking at the computers as an upgrade, simply because I am in the tech world and technology at this moment is at a hockey stick. So much so that in the last meeting, I actually commented on how I feel it needs to be a necessity from the safety standpoint that there is a teacher that is fully dedicated in understanding of how children are using the internet and the devices and all of those other pieces. In addition to understanding the projection of technology that within 6 years, it's a completely different world yet again. Case in point, AI didn't exist 4 years ago. It didn't exist during COVID. So that's my concern about not upgrading the technology. That being said, I understand fully, entirely, the destruction tendencies for whatever reason. And as a parent, I do not think that it is asking too much to have the parents and children sign agreements that if the product is, or excuse me, the technology, the item, the device, whatever the case is not respected in a way that it is useful or needs significant repairs, not just normal wear and tear because it's in a backpack, then it is in fact their responsibility to replace it. Regardless of where they are or their what's the word I'm looking for, privilege or financial ability, that to me feels like an appropriate thing to agree to, because if my child is destroying school property, you bet your bottom dollar he's going to replace it for you, and I will make sure to help him learn that lesson. Do you understand what so like to me, I think just is there a way that we can say, hey, listen, this is the agreement, we are providing this for you for free so that we can help you with your education, so that you do not get behind in how quickly technology is advancing or be at a disadvantage because you are unable to finish your homework because you don't have a computer. And also, there is reciprocation that is required if destruction does happen. Does that make sense?
We do.
Isn't that already in place?
It is. It is. We do charge parents. We do charge parents, and it's nightmare. It's a nightmare, to be honest. People don't pay, and there's no recourse. So I'm just being honest. It's all. So
that makes sense.
A classroom set instead of a 1-to-1. 800 times 40. 40 computers and in the 800 classrooms feels. I don't know.
Is that kindergarten as well? I mean, what's the earliest it is?
Everybody gets one, but not everybody takes them to home.
Right. I understood that part, but is it necessary at that age?
That's what I'm trying to get at. Do they need it in elementary, or can they have a lab where they can they can access? It feels like there's a lot.
See, I thought we were discussing older children. I apologize. So when it comes to younger children, I'm in full agreement. As like my son, who is 6th grade, just now got a device because there's no reason with their cognitive abilities and what they need in order to expand their brains and to have all the little fusions that need to happen as they're growing actually happen is much more tactical stimulation as opposed to screen stimulation. I feel like allowing parents to know about all the different computer games and all of the other things that they can have at home, sure, but I personally don't feel that it's necessary for anything other than learning how to actively type like we did in high school, right? That's still a necessity, especially because everybody has a laptop for everything now. But I don't think a one-to-one is necessary until you start introducing like group projects and research and teaching them how to do the research type of things, which I'm in agree would be like third grade at most, honestly. So when it goes to that, yes, the one-to-one classes so the teacher can have the computer and then maybe a computer lab for the littles to go to, right? Like to play ABC mouse or whatever. I mean, like absolutely. I agree with that.
The only thing that I would want to share about the one-to-one is if we're thinking of how we compare to other districts and areas is almost everyone does one-to-one nowadays. And I would just hate for us to be the district that doesn't provide access to our students the same way that other districts are doing. And so if I'm a parent and I'm trying to choose which district I want my kids to go to, and one offers one-to-one, the other one doesn't, it could be a reason for enrollment decline or not. So I think that is something that we should also be thinking about.
Appreciate you all sharing those perspectives and capturing those notes here as kind of some of those nuances as we say, like, okay, we may agree that like considering laptops and updated technologies is important, and we want to have this deeper conversation as well and consider all the risks, all the liabilities, all the pros and cons, especially as we think of all the stakeholder perspectives through that.
Yeah, I would agree. The nuance is definitely something to be discussed in further detail later.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I know your hand came down, but I know Zoom might have done that automatically.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so what was it that you would like to share?
So I think from the buildings perspective, I think it would be nice to know, as it relates to the surveys that were done, that was mentioned in the last month's meeting, is to better understand that beyond just HVAC and like the structures of the buildings and such like that, to understand more about that, because I think from a whole campus perspective, it would be nice to know what is happening from that perspective.
Definitely. I think it's just like saying, hey, with that report, what were the results by each school, to be able to look and say, do those cleanly fall in these buckets, or was there something else? And I know that's something that Dave and Saida shared in the first meeting too, was like, for a lot of the schools, they're like, fire panels are great, HVAC's great, but then they're rallied like, no, it's not. And so that those have crept in as well. So it'd be good to kind of get that reference. And David, I know you're aware of that as well too. But definitely.
And I think the other one would be, I'm assuming at some point we have a better understanding of their recommendations based on what they've been saying. Like, I can't imagine it's everything, because those numbers that they shared are a little scary.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's where one of the pieces I can let you know that we'll do is like this kind of here from these strategic buckets will end at meeting 4. Meeting 5 and meeting 6 is really about like, okay, here's additional questions that came up, additional discussions and nuances we wanted to dive into, and the additional data to help look. And so we'll be doing kind of a both and for those last 2 meetings to say, hey, here's some of the trends that are coming up in terms of what people are feeling like priorities, and here's some of the data we want to dig into. So being able to say, okay, HVAC, windows, paint, all these are coming up as priorities in discussion, or this may not be. So let's look at these. Let's say, great, we looked at rough 2025 costs. Let's look at more details about the prioritization, and let's start saying, great, if we're saying the midpoint for addressing these with the 2026 bond is 2029, what's the cost going to be in $2029, which means what's our ask going to be? And so we'll be able to look at those pieces of information to really dive into that layer of it in those last 2 meetings as we kind of get to wrapping up that recommendation there. Okay. So I'm going to go, David has his hand up. Jessica, yours came up, Claudia. I just saw you raise your hand too. So David, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Going back to the bathrooms, Lincoln High School in Portland has a all gender bathroom model with individual stalls with full doors and no no doors accessing next to the stalls or the sinks. So it's all gender, and staff or students can walk by any of the doors. And I find that to be a much more secure, as well as having a sense of safety, that it can't be as much of a gathering place. With regard to buildings, I think the top priority, in my opinion, is the building envelope, because if the roof system, the windows allow infiltration of water, then all the upgrades to HVAC, lighting, carpets, flooring can be damaged if the envelope isn't kept fully intact. And so that's a top priority there. A top priority in technology, I think, is the phone system in terms of safety and security, reliability, access to communication for staff, for students, for families. That is, the other things are all important for sure. But if parents can't call the schools, if staff can't call, schools can't call the AC, that's problematic. There's my input. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Y'all keep discussing. I have to jump to the mic real quick to give a 10-minute warning, and I'll be right on, but I have people who keep listening, so I'll be right back. Hey, all, just as a heads up, we have about 10 more minutes before we jump to whole group share out. So continue talking for the next 10 minutes and then decide on who's going to share what the top priorities were. Sorry, there's an echo going on. Who's going to share on the top priorities for your group? Thanks. Add it to the list. Okay, sorry about that, y'all. So I think it was Jessica, I believe, and then Claudia, you had your hand, and then I just saw another hand come up as well. So
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of piggyback on what David was saying about the building envelope and how one thing that I didn't hear about was like the risk of having mold exposure or things from wildfire smoke and all of that. So really thinking about being proactive on how we are looking at moisture, ventilation, and all of that, I think is important so that we can be prepared in case any of that affects any of our schools, if it's not already affecting our schools.
Appreciate you sharing that as part of the rationale. That's definitely a key aspect of it.
And I just wanted to add a side note to maybe answer Amanda when you were talking about surveys. They have tasks. Some of the teachers on special assignment, like in my building, have the music TOSA. And he has met with the high school people to see what the needs may be in the auditoriums and for music, theater, film, choir, band. And he sent me their needs today. So I know that they have tasks, different people in charge of different areas to have meetings and then send people who are in the bond committee their needs. So I got that list today. So I'm assuming that other people are getting lists as well from conversations they're having.
Thank you, Claudia, for that additional component there. Yeah, and if your hands up, go ahead and just jump off mute. Let's
Right. Hi, everybody. Pete here, principal at Newberry Elementary. I will, I guess, piggyback on a lot of y'all and what you're all saying already. The mention of the envelope by David and Jessica, that's got to be number one. I agree. And then, right below that, I think, if I'm speaking in a biased perspective, I would say we don't need HVAC because we just got ours in the last bond, but I know that there are buildings that do. And so HVAC has to be right up there because I remember this school, that Newberry, before we had the HVAC work in the previous bond. And I know that every other school needs that desperately. And so I would also add lighting. Our lighting, we were built in 1963. The lighting, I know it's boring and I don't know if it's going to translate to voters because at the end end of the day, we have to translate this to voters, but lighting is really important, and our lighting is awful. And I'm sure that we're not the only ones. Bathrooms, that's another one. That's a key priority. I like what David and Jessica and Claudia said about bathrooms. We have to make those way better. But however, maybe some things that we maybe don't have to do as much. I don't know what everyone's talking about with phones. I was under the impression that our whole district got a phone upgrade. I know that we did at Newberry, and so I don't know if phones are going to be such a big need for us right now. I would add that tech is a place that we could probably cut some costs there. I hear you with what you all are saying about maybe kids in primary grade levels don't need one-to-one. Maybe we could go with our a computer lab system for primary grade levels. I do know, though, that there are teachers in my building who are really intentional about their tech, and there's also the curriculum that's coming out now is all connected to tech. And so it really is just the world that we live in. And so even for elementary, I wouldn't want to do away with it entirely, but I'd be willing to have the conversation about primary grade levels for sure. And what else can I say? Maybe I've said enough, just wanted to echo a lot of the points that y'all already made. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pete. And y'all, I need to jump back to get a scroll and full group here, but please feel free to drop in chat if there's additional thoughts. There'll also be a form sent out as a recap from that. That will be a place to be able to share additional thoughts as well if you feel like you didn't get to voice it through chat or conversation here as well. But I'm going to get the groups back together to get ready to share out so we can make sure we're out on time this evening, and we'll go from there. And these questions you're putting in the chats are fantastic as well. They're questions that we can follow up with to get more data too. So please keep them coming. But thank you all very much for jumping in.
Thank you, Evan.
This system should be great. Yeah, thanks.
Fantastic. When it came to buildings and systems, some of our top points were playgrounds, specifically surrounding the discussion surrounding safety, inclusion, removing bar chips, and making sure everything was ADA accessible. Roofs, keeping dry and warm, protecting our investment. Windows, HVAC, and lighting. I'm just going to cheat and do like all of them. Sorry, guys. And then for technology, our primary one was Chromebooks, with a discussion about that being maintaining accessibility, and the thought that as long as we're able to maintain this technology and advance it, that kids would be able to, even if they miss class, be able to access their curriculum and feel like they haven't missed something in the classroom. Two more would include emergency power and the network.
It's not showing from the screen. Yeah.
I'm a general. I'm sorry. Wrong button.
It could be your right stand.
No. Really easier to do this on the. Okay, sorry about that. Getting together. Okay, so a couple things that were discussed in the buildings and systems space. One is just doors, and those can be interior doors, exterior doors. There's latching issues. There's door sagging issues. There's doors that don't come out of the encasement well, but also things like bathroom doors. And segueing into bathrooms, bathrooms in general need, in most places, a modern upgrade. There are places that still use the old pump style sink, and it's more than just aesthetics. There's a lot of kids that are uncomfortable using the bathrooms because they're not private, or they're not very private, or there's issues with the stalls, and so it becomes a inclusivity issue as well. I think everyone recognizes that roofs are a significant concern. One contextual point is like, hey, can we do a better job of somehow, managing the roofing sort of needs over time, so we're not just getting blasted by that so much in a single bond. And it might be a future comment, but the team wanted to say that. And then lastly, on buildings, I'll say lighting, gym lighting, obviously the fluorescent light stuff that Maya talked about. How do we take advantage of incentives now so we can be smart and efficient with their investment. There was others, but those are some of the top ones. In the technology space, I think there's recognition around, the phone system is obviously something, if it needs to be replaced, we need to do that. A lot of equipment in schools, be they projectors and other things. Obviously, we need to continue to refresh Chromebooks, although again, it'd be nice if the replacement cycle wasn't so tied to the bond. We had a lot of discussion about the limitations of that, because that's a 10-year cycle, not good. And then lastly, there was some discussion just around, it'd be good to see a lot of the technology maybe on the table as we work through things, because there was a lot of technology investment in the last bond, particularly in the network and the fiber and stuff. And so maybe seeing that a little more holistically as we make our decisions would be helpful to the community.
So I'll do a quick share from the online community. We talked similarly on the buildings and systems, the windows, HVAC, lighting came up. There was a big push in feeling that the building envelope components were very urgent, just thinking in terms of risk and making sure that investments are protected and staff and students are safe and secure in those environments as well. So there's a lot of discussion around there. Similarly with the phone system as well in technology and the updating the laptops and Chromebooks. And there was a desire to get some nuanced information about thinking through investing those components, but also there were some questions wondering if one-to-one is still really necessary for our earliest learners in the system, and thinking through that discussion, but not knowing if this bond is a opportunity to have that discussion as a group or not, but just wanting to address some more nuances in talking about that area of prioritization as well. Great. So perfect. We'll hand it back over to this group here. Awesome. Thanks, Erica.
Okay, our group, I'm going to try my best to hate this. For us, we talked about buildings and systems, of course, roofs. We want to make sure that we're dry. I think everybody has said that. HVACs, the lighting, because of the not having the ability to buy fluorescent lighting. So we kind of have a time frame to switch over to that. Those are our top areas. The fire panels right now are creating being tripped, and they still have to go and check on those. So that is something that I think we all thought was something that should be a priority. Of course, the ADA was another thing that we put on there. For technology, one-to-one is really important. I think the kids are really used to that already, and it serves our community really well. And the infrastructure, we can't have the one-to-one without the infrastructure to support that. And cybersecurity. We did have some questions around why do we need printers? What are we still printing? Just because a lot of things are like forms, like then there might be for some reason, I don't know, just thinking about like if we still need that. Same thing with projectors. There was a question around those. And then a question around the phones. Like, do we still need to replace the phones if the traditional standalone? Can we use the new technology, like using Teams or however else we're using the software that we have, to use that as the way that we communicate and maybe save on that? So yeah, that was our two.
Okay. Great. But we'll hear from Maya's group back to you.
You're closer. Go on Zoom or Google Meets.
Thank you.
A lot of what we talked about has already been mentioned, but our top priorities for buildings and systems would be anything that's super old, like old steam boilers, windows from 1982, all that. Probably time to update those. We've got a couple HVAC systems that really need replaced. The lighting, just to take advantage of the incentives that are available. Roofing, and then I'm adding on here that I didn't tell you guys. The electrical services, because somebody else just mentioned that, I think is really important that we make sure that those are all up to being able to provide for the load of the building. Technology, replace the phones because they're end of life, but you brought up good questions. Replace, repair devices for the student that's crucial for a learning experience, that they're provided with those items, and a boardroom update. Whatever is needed in here, because the community comes here a lot. And it might be a great example of showing off our district on downloads.
Wow, that was a near miss. So our group, the back table over here, I feel like we talked a little bit more thematically than concretely. So our top items were safety, code compliance, ADA compliance, student and staff comfort, and lighting. And obviously, when you talk about student and staff comfort, that's not only the ability to learn and teach, but also kind of the incentive to like attend school. That was a good point that was made at our table. When it comes to technology, cybersecurity, that's just critical. Network infrastructure allows everything else that you buy to work. And then just the notion of the longevity and flexibility of your investments, because things do change so quickly. So I know some of that might be a little bit crystal balling it, but how can we choose things that are going to have the longest life and allow us to do the most things for, into the future? And devices obviously are important to replace those and make sure that they're able to be supported and maintain the current software and everything. And then to be ready for AI was an important thing that came up at our table. Obviously, that's coming onto the scene in a big way, and it's just going to become a more integral part of all of our lives. And how do we do that in the most responsible way?
Thank you all for diving into those discussions. Just some high-level observations from my view in terms of seeing these. Like, there was a lot of overlap across the groups, which is good. And there was a lot of alignment in what was shared this evening, which is good as well. But some great questions to kind of dig further and say, hey, can we talk a little more or see about some of these pieces? And some pieces were raised, especially around restrooms and phone systems, to say, hey, like there's safety and security aspects of this. So where do we kind of see these lines? And that leads to kind of our next meeting, where we're going to hear from safety and security as well as college and career to refine this as we get further and further along. So thank you all very much for diving in and being with us this evening. And as a change up from the Thursday meetings, we have our next meeting just to call attention to is going to be on Wednesday, the 15th that week, same place, same time. So look forward to seeing you all then. And please reach out if you have any questions. There'll be a recap from Beth with slides as well as a form. If there's anything you feel like you didn't get to share in the Zoom chat or with your group discussion or any ideas that you come to mind, there'll be a platform to be able to share that with us as well as feedback as we prepare for the next meeting too. Thank you all very much and have a great evening.